Okay, I mean, perhaps we can actually just start now, as we wanted to have an early start, well, at least early for some of us. So we will just go ahead, and then more people will join for sure. So welcome everyone to this, actually the first edition of our Interreg for a Greener Europe webinar series. We've been thinking at Interact that we need more opportunities for Interreg practitioners in general to get together and discuss common issues that we have on the topics that we all work together. And when deciding on the first topic, it came pretty obviously to us that climate change adaptation and disaster risk management should be the first one to focus on, as it has been one of the recurrent themes of cooperation programs from the very beginning, and as we know, the growing challenges that we have regarding climate and disaster in all kinds, all over Europe and all over the world, means that we need to be more resilient, more prepared for facing these challenges. So my name is Nicolas, and together with my colleague Guilherme, we'll lead you through this event today. We will have a great team of speakers that will come and share their experience as well, and we'll introduce them throughout the webinar. You will also have plenty of opportunity to join the conversation, the discussions, and ask questions at any time. You can use the chat, or after each presentation, we'll also give you the floor. And Guilherme, do you want to say a few words first, maybe, also to say hi to everyone? And because we had recently the Interreg Go annual event, some of you were there, I'm sure. And actually, it was one of the topics that we discussed there, right?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Nicola, for the introduction. And again, it's nice meeting you. See you, some of you again. As Nicola said, we were also in Gorica for the Interreg Go event, and we had a session which was dedicated to disaster risk management. And it was quite an interesting session. We managed to have some very good discussions and also some site visits to to the Civil Protection Agency from the Friuli Venezia Giulia region. And also we could also see on the ground some experiences from some of the projects that are being funded by Interreg there. And as Nicola was saying, this webinar is, we can say, it's kind of like a follow-up from that. And we had some interesting takeaways from Gorica, for sure. And I think we all agree that Interreg is really a very important tool to support cross-border and transnational collaboration on climate change adaptation and disaster risk management. Interreg is really supporting cities and regions of all sizes to speed, the way that they are getting prepared for shocks and stresses that they are faced. And I think we also agree that this multi-level government approach is very important when you talk about disaster risk preparedness, and it's really important to engage with different stakeholders and governments, and of course across border. That's key. And from what we've been seeing, from what happened just on Monday in Spain and Portugal, no region, no city, no country is spared from these disasters. And I think what is also good about Interreg is that you can collaborate between regions, for example, in Spain, Portugal, that have been facing wildfires and such issues for a long time, with regions like Sweden, which are now facing these similar challenges. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to be here together, and we at Interact really want to continue this collaboration. So hopefully this is just the beginning of even more activities related to that. As we all know, we need to be much more prepared for and resilient. So I'll hand over back to Nicolas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guilherme. Yes, indeed. I think the key word that I took also from the discussions we had at the Interreg annual event was the need for integrated approaches for multi-factor risks, to be able to to overcome them and to be better prepared for them. We need to look for these comprehensive, over-encompassing solutions and not tackling them from specific angles too much. Otherwise, might be missing some of the consequences that these disasters bring. And I will share a few slides just to give you an introduction now to set the scene a little bit from the context of Interreg, because I believe from the participants, I'm glad that we have many colleagues from Interreg programs, from managing authorities and secretariats, but also we have quite a few people from projects, actually, from running Interreg projects, or people that are just interested to know more about what Interreg does and how territorial cooperation operates and tackle these challenges. So really welcome everyone, and this is also the chance that we have to get together as a group of, let's say, interested participants and stakeholders who want to make a difference in combating these effects, but through the power of cooperation. This is what we do, right? Um, so first of all, as we said in the introduction, these disasters and risks come from all angles, from very different factors, and one that I was not expecting, uh, and yeah, one that I didn't really see coming. A couple of days ago, you would have seen on the news that the whole of Spain and Portugal got basically disconnected from the whole world, um, which was a very surprising moment when you think it's only happening to your flat or your building, but actually it's the whole, not only the whole city, but the whole country. And and even though maybe it's not the most catastrophic disaster, because within a few hours it got back, and this is something that on other continents they are facing a lot more frequently. But for it to happen in two EU member states and at the scale, at national scale, maybe revealed a lot of these effects of our growing needs, our dependence for electricity, energy, anything we do, and that we can't function without it. Um, so this is clearly a sign that we need to adapt drastically to any kinds of situations that can occur, that occur more and more, and and yeah, be more ready for things to happen in that way, and also in very unpredictable way. Um, I wanted to go briefly on where we are at this stage of the implementation um, of Interreg programs. For those of you who have been at the Interreg annual event last month or have seen the State of Interreg report, these were the figures. They were shared the figures of the current state of implementation, and I wanted to have a zoom in on the policy objective too. So greener Europe, where you as you know we have the climate change adaptation specific objective 2.4, which has been by far the one that has been selected the most by programs. Out of the 86 total Interreg programs, 72 programs have picked the specific objectives at programming stage. That means that effectively 72 programs all over Europe and beyond are working on climate change adaptation, disaster risk management. And within this, there's a wide array of fields and sectors that are being covered, and a wide range as well of natural and non-natural risks that are being tackled through projects. So we see that already at this stage, so maybe mid-term of the implementation of Interreg, we're already halfway overall, or almost halfway in terms of um, operations having been selected and approved by committees, but also a lot of projects have actually started, and over 700 projects have already been allocated for climate change adaptation. So, and you will see some examples of these later on in the webinar. But this is to give you this idea that work is truly underway, and we will start seeing more and more results as well. And of course, there's always a need to build on what was effectively done before as well. So there's a lot at our hands to plan further as well. Just in terms of types of intervention. Okay, if you don't mind switching off your microphones if you're not asking questions, thank you. Okay, so in terms of budget allocations to these types of investments, this is specifically on the specific objective for climate change adaptation and disaster risk management. The main three, as you can see, are all related to natural disasters, climate-related risks such as floods, landslides, storms, fires, droughts, and even earthquakes that fit within this. But the fourth one is actually not the last one in terms of impact and of importance of the solutions we are dealing with, the situations we're dealing with. So these human-induced risks, which we'll also have some examples of later on. And I think anything can be related to climate when we're talking about disaster risks, but also we can make a point that everything is somehow human-induced, right? So this is also an important notion to keep in mind when we're dealing with this framework and these skeletons of reporting and showing how we are as programs contributing to these objectives through these indicators, but actually the solutions on the ground are really what is making the difference. And Interreg is not the only one providing solutions for disaster risk management and climate adaptation. And actually, as part of the cohesion policy, which is over 19 billion euros for this 21-27 period, actually Interreg funds are only a small portion of it. And as you know, ERDF supporting regions directly is one of the main pillars of this policy to make it happen on the ground, as well as cohesion fund, just transition fund, and also looking beyond that other EU funding programs. As we know, Horizon Europe has two specific missions, one tackling civil security for society, which includes disaster resilient societies as an area of intervention, as well as another one on climate and mobility and energy. And we can also mention maybe LIFE program with a lot of funds available within this sub-program of climate change mitigation and adaptation. And finally, from my side, just wanted to also underline that everything we do as part of Interreg programs and projects fits within a wider perspective at EU level. And our contributions through territorial cooperation is what needs to be highlighted as well, that Interreg has a specific added value, that it brings people together and finds solutions that are applicable across borders, and that's the beauty of it. But in order for it to be better known and reach maybe wider stakeholders, it's important to link it with strategic and regulatory framework as well, setting out by the European Union to adapt to these impacts of climate change, the big goals of becoming climate resilient by 2050, by the EU mission for adaptation to climate change, aiming for at least 150 EU regions supported towards climate resilience, 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. And as part of the EU adaptation strategy, this is really the goal, right? To make this adaptation smarter, faster, more systemic, to step up the international action on adaptation to climate change. And it's combined with more specific directives, such as the Floods Directive, for example. And there's another side which is not necessarily climate related per se, but the preparedness union strategy is also there and has been launched recently to prevent and react to these emerging threats and crises with a lot of key actions that are covering every aspect, every essential societal functions that we have, and to better prepare and coordinate the response. But I will stop here because I'm very pleased to welcome now two colleagues from the European Commission. First, Delia from the Directorate on Cohesion Policy and Regional Development, and also Laura from the Directorate of Civil Protection, right? DG Echo. So I will give you both the floor, and you can help me navigating this current state of play and setting the scene of what we're dealing with and what the Commission is doing at the moment to support territories and population with preparedness and coordination of disaster risk management. But first, maybe Delia, you can tell us a bit more about the regional development side.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Many thanks, dear Nicolas and Interreg colleagues, for inviting me to present this study on disaster risk management that we published recently in 2024. I will try to share my screen so that you can see my slides. Can you confirm that you see the slides in presenters mode?
Yes, perfect.
Amazing. So I'm, as Nicola said, Delia Bonsignore from DG Regio Unit D2. And together with some other colleagues, we developed this study on strengthening the resilience of EU border regions, which indeed we published in 2024, and that is now available on the InfoRegio page. The study was also carried out in cooperation with DG Echo, which Laura is representing here today, and with Technopolis Group. And this forms really part of our actions beyond Interreg funding. As Nicolas mentioned, this type of projects can be financed under Cohesion Policy Objective 2.4. But what we see is that cooperation is sometimes hampered by the so-called border obstacles. And this is why in the Regio D2, there is the border focal point team that develops also studies and produces knowledge to support then your efforts at local level. The aim of the study was really that of strengthening the capacities for disaster risk management in cross-border areas. And to do so, in the first place, we mapped and identified the main risks that cross-border regions are exposed to. And also, what are the existing agreements, tools, and institutional processes that allow the competent authorities then in border regions to manage the risk identified. We also analyzed the governance framework and arrangements used to apply effectively such agreements and tools on the ground. And we also wanted to understand what are the main gaps affecting cross-border territories in their risk management capabilities. And based on this, we formulated some proposals to address these gaps at different governance levels, so local, regional, national, and also European. And lastly, we developed 10 case studies through which we identified good practices in cross-border disaster risk management that we hope can serve as inspiration and that can be replicable in other EU territories. As you can see in the slide, the study mapped 53 borders. So we have internal land borders for maritime and 6 borders with candidate countries. And we took into account 12 types of risks. Both natural, such as floods, fires, but also man-made, let's say, so cyber, chemical. As part of the study, we developed also a set of border fishes and maps per each border included in the scope of the study. You can see an example here in the slide on how this looks like. The border fishes and maps show the risk assessment, exposure, and impact on both sides of the border, highlighting whenever there are discrepancies in the assessment from one side of the border to the other. It also includes the governance readiness and gaps, together with the availability of tools in each cross-border area. And based on this information, also recommendations are provided on how to strengthen cross-border disaster risk management in this specific border. So this you will find as annex to the main publication. I left the main links to all this material in the last slide so that you can access it. And also, as I was mentioning before, we developed 10 case studies, also available in a separate publication that provide good practices in cross-border disaster risk management. So hopefully this will be also useful tools for you to see how cooperation happens in other border regions, and provide you with some examples of tools that can be developed to enhance then cooperation efforts on cross-border disaster risk management. Now let's delve a bit into what are the key findings of the study generally. As you can see, the study identified 339 legal and governance tools that are available to address the 12 types of risks mapped as part of the study. And it also identified 268 agreements, of which we noticed the majority address one border area. So we had 192 agreements identified that are addressing only one border area, while 76 are multi-border. And we noticed also, we observed that a quarter of these agreements concerns Northern Europe. From the graph, we can also observe that more than half of the agreements are multi-risk, so 55% of the total number of agreements, 139 in total. And there are only a few agreements that are specifically tackling only certain risks, such as animal and plant diseases, terrorism, drought, geographical risks, and epidemics and pandemics. What we observed through the study is that there is generally a direct correlation in between the severity of the risks, of course, and the availability of agreements in each specific border. And also, depending on the legal system of the countries concerned, what we can observe is that the number and nature also of the agreements varies. What emerges really from the study is that certain borders are covered by many bilateral agreements. This is the case, for instance, of all the Austrian borders, but also Czech Republic and Slovakia, France and Italy, Spain and Portugal, while instead no agreements were identified on other borders. So there is also a need to, let's say, boost cooperation activities in these areas. And notwithstanding the different approaches that can be identified in the different border regions, whenever tackling disaster risk management, what we do see is that bilateral and multilateral agreements are really valuable tools to enhance cross-border cooperation in disaster risk management. Very interesting are, of course, the key takeaways from the study, which I would like to share with you today. In the first place, what we noticed through the analysis is that there is surely the need for more common joint risk assessments. As I already mentioned, approaches to disaster risk management vary quite a lot across countries, both in terms of risks tackled and of disaster risk management capability assessments. And this, of course, leads to achieving different levels of performance in this area. In some borders, we also observed that there is a discrepancy in the assessment of risk exposure of the territory, for example, which can lead to different preparedness and response capacity in the two sides of the border. So this also highlights the importance of really developing joint risk assessments, and also the need for more comprehensive guidance on how to do so. So how to develop these plans in a cross-border context. Also, what emerges is that a better understanding of legal frameworks across the border is key for improved disaster risk management. The lack of knowledge about the legislation in the neighboring country can affect substantially effective and cross-border cooperation in this area. And therefore, it is really essential to map and understand better the legislation and governance arrangements on the other side of the border to improve cross-border cooperation. So what would be very useful and recommended is also that local and regional governments formalize mutual aid agreements with their counterparts across borders. Also, multi-level governance, as already been mentioned today, is fundamental. The roles and responsibilities of local governments in the context of disaster risk management could be better defined and strengthened. And there is also a need for ongoing training to enhance their cooperation and collaboration capacities. National governments and regional bodies can surely play a vital role in supporting cross-border disaster risk management efforts at local level. And this support may include financial assistance, technical expertise, but also policy guidance. And also there is a need to strike also the right balance between providing bottom-up incentives for cross-border cooperation in this field, but also strengthening the role of the national level for better coordination. Something that came up quite strong is the need to improve data availability and comparability across borders. Indeed, establishing mechanisms for cross-border data sharing and information exchange is critical for timely decision-making during disasters. And in some cases, in fact, what we saw is that data availability appears not to be sufficient. Local and regional governments in this sense should really work together to ensure that the relevant data is accessible but also usable. There is also a need to strengthen generally cross-border cooperation teams, mechanisms, and exercises. So what we saw is that what would boost then cross-border cooperation in this field at local level would be the more cross-border disaster preparedness exercises at local level in order to be able to practice joint response to disasters. And
je vais t'envoyer l'expérience d'Elias. 3 jours que je me laisse sur tout de suite. Tu vas m'envoyer?
Sorry, if you could possibly mute.
Bah, de toute façon, la semaine dernière, j'ai pas eu le temps de t'ajouter.
Sorry, okay, thank you. So what we see also is that cross-border disaster risk management networks and forums can provide opportunities then for sharing best practices, lessons learned, and collaboration, and we invite really all the stakeholders concerned to join them. The study also indicates that the next step in cross-border cooperation would be the establishment of joint units and joint teams between neighboring countries. And last but not least, what emerges from the study is that, of course, as was already mentioned, ERDF and Interreg are the main funding instruments for cross-border cooperation, and their added value remains undisputed. However, what we see is that if mechanisms for sustained interaction across borders are not established, then the efforts tend to vanish whenever the project of initiative finishes. So there is really a need to ensure the sustainability of projects of cross-border structures and generally activities that are carried out in cooperation, also whenever the financing under Interreg or ERDF finishes. I would like to conclude by giving you a brief overview of the follow-up to this study, which is the pilot action Resilient Borders, which is managed by Lamotte and IBR on behalf of DG Regio. The action, as you can see, has 2 lots. One is dedicated to cross-border crisis management, and another one to cross-border spatial planning. And under the crisis management lot, 9 pilots were selected, and they are currently in early stages of implementation, and they're receiving a grant to up to 40,000 euros each. These 9 pilots, you can see where they are located in the map that are included in this slide, and also what they are about. They will generally work on preventing and reducing the effects of crisis situations in cross-border territories by developing common plans, by setting up joint exercises, and also preparing coordination protocols. So I invite you to have more, if you want to have more information, to consult the website where you can find then targeted information on each of these pilots. Here are the links to the studies that I referred to. So there is the final report of the study, the board of fishes and maps, but also the case studies. And lastly, the link to our resilient border pilot action. I thank you very much for your attention. Of this presentation was useful to you. I'm very happy to reply to any questions in case any.
Thank you very much, Delia. Very interesting study, and I think it brings a lot of what programs are dealing with into perspective, and really highlights also ways forward for our action. So that's really great. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions for us or for Delia, for now, you may raise your hand at any point or ask questions in the chat. And in the meantime, I would like to welcome Laura from DG ECHO, European Commission, to tell us a bit more about the DG ECHO side of acting for disaster risk management and enhancing resilience in the EU.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Oh, we hear you in echo.
Apologies. So I tried to connect through several channels, from which one channel where you would see my face and from the other channel where you would see my slides, but clearly the technology became too complicated, and while being from echo, I still don't want you to hear the echo.
It's so okay, we can hear you well now.
So no face, but at least hope, now let's check if you can see my slides.
Yes, perfect.
And they are in the presenting mode.
Yes, they are.
Okay, very good. So sorry for the technical hiccup. My name is Laura Indrilunite. I work indeed in the Directorate General for European Civil Protection. Thank you very much for this invitation to the Interreg community. It's not every day that we have a chance to meet people from a local level across Europe, because civil protection is normally a national competence. So at EU level, we are just taking the supporting role, and our counterparts are usually national civil protection authorities. We don't get a lot of contact further down the governance chain. So this is a very interesting, and thank you very much for putting this topic as the first topic of webinars with the Interreg community. We are very happy to see the priority and the attention dedicated to this topic, which we think is very important indeed.
Thank you, Laura. It seems like there's some issue with participants not seeing your slides. Several people are saying that they can't see your slides.
Okay, and you can, or? Okay,
I can personally, and others people say they can, but some others don't for some reason. Okay. Okay, it seems like the majority can.
Okay. I don't know.
Let's see if you move to the next one. Yeah, now you have. Hopefully, it was just the initial hiccup.
Okay. Otherwise, I guess you will share them, and I will try to be visual in my explanations as well. One of your requests was to give an introduction to the regulatory framework of disaster risk management. So there are several challenges with this request, so to say. So the first, of course, that there are a lot of different pieces of legislation that regulate disaster risk management in the EU, and they also are of different strength, so to say. Some of them are directives, some of them are regulations, in some cases we don't have any legislation, and here just a slide which shows that we have a directive for flood risks. We also have a directive to deal with industrial accidents like the Seveso directive, but you don't see anything on the wildfire risk management, while wildfires, is a almost daily occurrence every summer in many parts of Europe. So we really have a very diverse ecosystem of how disaster risk management is being addressed. So there's a challenge, of course, to give this the comprehensive overview, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to underline that while there are many risks, they require, of course, tailored approaches. At the same time, as civil protection, we have to be ready for everything, right? Because disasters can be triggered by many different triggers, the human-made, climate-induced, natural hazards, and so on. But at the end of the day, we always want to protect people, the environment, the infrastructure, and we have to think in ways how we can be more resilient and more prepared as a whole, as a system, and from whichever angle the disasters come our way. So that's a little bit the logic of also disaster resilience and preparedness thinking in civil protection, and this is what I'm going to be talking about throughout my presentation. So here, just a quick...
Laura, just to be on the safe side, because I think there are still people with issues with seeing your slides. So maybe if you don't mind, I will share your presentation.
Okay,
and,
no
and
worries. Do I need to
Okay.
do something to stop it?
Yes, if you can stop sharing, and I will take over. Nope. Okay, how is that for everyone now?
Okay, there's some hands up.
Seems to be okay now. If the people who... Okay, perfect. Thank you, Anna.
A lot of hands up, so that's good.
And Jan as well. Thank you. Okay, so this was your first slide showing the different
So now let's move to the
instruments.
next one. To the next one.
And that's it.
Indeed, so more from this civil protection angle, from the disaster resilience and preparedness angle. As already mentioned, civil protection is, of course, national authority. It's the national authorities who are responsible for protecting their people's lives and their, assets that are in the country. But we do cooperate at the EU level in certain areas. And here, if some of you might know, and some of you maybe are not so familiar, we call it a mechanism. So there's a cooperation framework, and it covers the different elements of disaster risk management. So a lot, of course, is about response coordination. And one example is now every summer we have big wildfires in different places now in Europe. I cannot just say in the Mediterranean anymore. And then, for example, if national capacities, the planes, the helicopters are overwhelmed and not sufficient, then we coordinate and we cooperate and send additional planes and so on. And for floods, similarly, different capacities. So whenever a country is overwhelmed, the EU mechanism is there to come in and coordinate help from other places in the EU. But it's not only about response, it's also about being prepared together. So there are certain things we're investing as EU, for example, the same firefighting planes. We have a number of planes that are financed and acquired by the EU, and they are EU planes, so to say, and it's not limited just to planes. There are also other types of capacities to deal with chemical, nuclear, radiological threats, and medical stockpiles, and so on. So where it has been decided that the EU has to be prepared, and a slightly less heavy component, but still an important component, prevention as well. There are also things we cooperate on prevention as civil protection. And here I want to highlight a few regulatory requirements that are also for member states to be done. Next slide, please, Nicholas. So the legislation that we have in place for civil protection at EU level requires a few things from national authorities or subnational authorities, it says, so it's really flexible. And what it requires in the area of prevention is to assess disaster risks regularly. And then some of this information is shared at the EU level, so there's a discussion around it, so to say, between member states and the Commission. There's also a requirement to assess the capability to manage those risks. This information is not shared at the EU level, but member states are encouraged to think not only about their risks, but also about the capacity to deal with those risks. And then, of course, to turn this all information into planning. So have specific procedures and documents and arrangements in place to manage the risks. Another element is also an invitation to work on improving disaster loss data, which is a big challenge in all EU countries, but at the same time a very important base for any evidence-based action. And this is where it really work needs to accelerate. So these are things that the civil protection mechanism requires from member states. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn from the legal requirements more to the policy angle. So we have the civil protection mechanism in place for many years in the current form, developing form like for 20 years. And this was the how we cooperated and the things that information that we have been sharing that I just showed. But the risk landscape has been really evolving fast, and I don't need to explain here to anybody. We've gone through a pandemic. We are dealing with the effects of the war in Ukraine and the new security threats that come with it. We are seeing new extremes in the events that we've known before, like floods or wildfires, and just again, for an illustration, the electricity grid can go down in several countries at the same time. So there are very different things to be dealt with. And in this context, what this Commission in this mandate said is that we need a preparedness strategy. So we need a strategy that helps us be ready for all of this. Next slide, please. And this is the response. So a month ago, a new EU Preparedness Union strategy was adopted. So it's a policy document, it's a strategy, it's not a legislation, but still it gives a sense of where we want to go as the EU and how we think we can go there. It's a non-binding document. It's also a EU-level document, so it doesn't really have obligations for member states. But of course, we hope to inspire everybody to work in this direction. And there are several, of course, actions that we will cooperate also with member states. So what does this strategy contain? I will not go into many details in all of these elements that are included, but I wanted to highlight a few things. So first of all, it takes an all hazards approach. So as I said, it's about being ready for the full spectrum of risks. It doesn't mean that we will abandon working on individual risks and how they need to be managed and specific solutions that they require. But what we say is that we need to be more aware of the full spectrum, that we need to do our risk assessments in a way that provide a full picture that allow us to consider how these risks can interact better and not just, focus on our sectoral work that we are doing, that we need to be better at that. So that's one thing. Then, of course, this requires a lot of cooperation between sectors and institutions. So whole of government is here as a principle. So we cooperate between different ministries and sectors, but also with the national authorities and the local authorities across the board. And then we want this effort to be a whole of society effort. So it doesn't mean there's just civil protection authority focusing on how to protect things that we want to protect, but it's also involving citizens in being actors in their own preparedness. It's about working with the private sector, who also takes responsibilities and actions to contribute to this, to their own security, but also to the society security as a whole. So that's, of course, a big and nice picture. Now, how to move from these principles to more concrete things? There are 7 action areas highlighted in the strategy. So one is, of course, again, about being more risk aware and doing our risk assessments better, early warning systems better, using foresight methods to be, more forward-looking. Then a key area is resilience of vital societal functions, and I think the recent blackout is a good reminder of why this is important area of focus, because at the end of the day, what we want to keep running in any disaster is the electricity, the water supply, the other things on which our societies depend on, and this is the focus on what we need to protect. As I already mentioned, population preparedness, again, at the center of everything we do, cooperating with private sector, but also with military actors, thinking about new security threats. It's absolutely important. Rethinking our crisis response mechanism, how we coordinate in crisis as the EU, when the crisis is very complex and requires a lot of stakeholders. And then, of course, international partnerships like with NATO and other countries. So this is the big picture. Now, I wanted to zoom in into maybe one of these is the population preparedness. Next slide, please. Just a little bit as an example, as also the area where a lot of things need to happen at the local level. It's at the EU, we do not really communicate with daily, with citizens. So here, local action is key. And so that's why I wanted also to underline it. Things that the strategy promotes is, for example, population self-sufficiency, 72 hours. Again, the scenario of a blackout shows that maybe reminds us all individual also to work on this. So this is one of the areas where local initiatives promoting it and integrating it into different actions would be very much welcome. It's also about early warning systems and making sure they reach the citizens, so having procedures in place, raising awareness of the population of how they will be warned. It's also about raising awareness of risks, education, and engaging youth. So these type of initiatives that are being promoted. Next slide, please. And here I wanted also to give you a little taster of how currently our population across the EU is prepared and risk aware. We did a Eurobarometer survey last year. Results came out in September, so really brand new. And it's a picture that you can see across the EU, and also you can see by member states. So you can look into whichever is of most interest to you. And it's a really in-depth analysis of different elements of risk awareness and preparedness of population. Next slide, please. So for example, one snapshot, and here I think it matches well with what you, Nicholas, have been showing on what we are financing under Interreg, that climate change risks are very much on top of the investment bar. So here also, this is what the EU population prioritizes, so to say, or feel most exposed to. You see a map, but also at the same time, you see some interesting elements where some countries actually feel more exposed to other threats, like political or geopolitical threats, or cybersecurity threats, or health threats. So it's a matter also of perception, and also, of course, a matter of exposure. Next slide, please. And so how prepared or risk aware do they feel? And here we find quite a number of concerning findings, and also a lot of work ahead of us for everybody. And I wanted to highlight a few elements. So, for example, almost every second person in the EU says that they don't feel well informed about risks that could personally affect them. They also even more feel they are not well prepared for a disaster. When they travel in the EU, again, almost every second person says that they don't know where they would need to look for information about risks in that country, in the other country. And then about electricity, we asked about some vital societal functions. So again, every second person says that they wouldn't be able to go on longer than one day without electricity for, to keep going with their phones and so on. And then there are even much more concerning percentages when it comes to really are you informed about your local response plans? Do you know where your shelter is? Do you know where the evacuation route is? Here, like 1 in 10 persons are saying that they know. So really a big scope of action to improve at local level awareness of what to do in a disaster. And the same also quite concerning, only 7% say they are volunteering. So the community spirit is not there. And Interreg, I think, is a good tool to work on that. So that's why I wanted to highlight these elements. Next slide, please. And here, okay, I guess I don't need to preach too much what can be, relevance of all these areas that are highlighted in the strategy at local level. I think all of them are relevant, and some of them actually can only be delivered through local level and through cross-border cooperation. So just to highlight, that risk-informed planning, identifying what are the critical functions, critical infrastructure in your area. How can you work together with your partners across the border to make sure these services remain functional and can support in a disaster both sides, so you have a redundancy. So these are the things that can be worked on. Again, citizen engagement and drills and all sorts of campaigns can be very powerful and clearly are needed still, even though we might feel that we've been investing a lot in that, but clearly the results of the Eurobarometer show that we haven't reached our communities. And then of course, when there are investments, it's always good to think again in this preparedness or hazard mode. Is this investment going to be just for example, if it's an investment, energy efficiency investment in school, is it going to just serve the energy efficiency objective, or can it also at the same time be used to seismically reinforce it if it's a seismically active area? Can it be a shelter in a disaster? So then, of course, further adaptations are needed, so that when we intervene with our funding, with our investment, so that we make sure we make the best out of it in this integrated manner. So these are my messages from the civil protection angle, and sorry for all the technical problems that we have encountered.
No problem. Thank you very much, Laura, for a very interesting presentation. As you said, well, it highlighted, of course, with the recent blackout in Spain and Portugal. I think colleagues from these countries can confirm as well that there was no way that people were prepared for 24 hours, let alone 72 hours. So it shows that there's plenty of room for improvement for sure, and reinforcing what cooperation can bring through that. And I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, this is also why we're doing this kind of meetings and webinars, is that we can show also what Interreg does. And we're very glad that Commission colleagues from the thematic DGs, let's say, can also help build that bridge between Interreg funds and the thematic objectives at EU level. And hopefully this is a first step towards more collaboration between us. Thank you. And Guilherme, any thoughts? Or what's next?
Thank you very much, Nicholas, and thank you all, Laura, as well, for the presentation. And I think it was really good to see, the current status of where we are in terms of the perception from citizens, if they are prepared, and also, of course, what's coming up as new shocks and new, disasters that are occurring, or for example, being here in Denmark, we never thought about heat waves, but it's something that people need to prepare now for heat waves, and people maybe they're not there yet. So that's interesting to see. So that's why we really need to continue our work at Interreg and further developing this collaboration. And now I think talking about this, we have a great opportunity now also to hear from a global expert. I think because we always been talking, it's great from the European level, all the European collaboration, but there's a lot also happening, internationally, and it's always good to have this perspective from someone outside of the, what you call like this, the Interreg world or Commission world. So we're really glad that Professor Dr. Nicola Tolling, who's chair of the UNESCO chair on urban resilience from South Denmark University, accepted our invitation to speak, and he will talk a little bit about global challenges and how they are affecting Europe as well. So Dr. Nicola, he has more than 20 years experience working in research, capacity building, and sustainable development, resilience, climate change, circular economy, focusing mainly on cities and regions. He has coordinated in over 80 research, education, and urban development projects worldwide in several countries, including Colombia, Philippines, Argentina, Mexico, Indonesia, Thailand, India. So really a broad international expertise. So I'm really glad to have you here, Nicola, and I'd like to hand over the floor to you for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Guilherme. Thank you, Nicholas, and thanks to Interact and Interreg for the kind invitation. I will now share my screen for the presentation. I hope that you can now see it full screen mode.
Yes, we can. There's just a Teams notification in the corner that maybe you can remove.
Yes, I will. Sorry. Thank you for highlighting
That's it.
that. Yes, good.
Perfect.
So I would like to start clarifying what I intend for urban resilience. And urban resilience does integrate climate change with disaster risk reduction at urban and territorial level within the wider framework of sustainable development. It is not a synonym of climate adaptation only, it's not a synonym of only disaster risk reduction, but again shall tackle both causes and effect of major disaster and major challenges, including climate, but not only limiting in this case to adaptation, but including also causes like the mitigation part of it. The concept it's very well rooted on a series of UN level policies and strategy, starting with the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the New Urban Agenda, but also the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. So we've seen also from a colleague from DG Econ, DG Region, different classification of disasters. We are spanning from disasters that are clearly human-induced, like industrial terrorism, nuclear, etc., to disaster that we are defining as natural, like earthquake, volcanic eruption. We are also having hazards that are related to climate more directly, from floods to temperature rise and droughts. Again, just a reminder, the reason why we are speaking and we're working on resilience is to avoid ultimately major loss and damages, and to be prepared in case hazards are happening, and be also able to respond to a disaster in order, again, to not damage or lose completely human life, livelihoods, but also structure, infrastructure, and the service they're providing, and also ecosystem and the ecosystem services that are fundamental for human life. Also, as clarification, it's important to remind that the risk is a component of assets, exposure, and vulnerability that can be mitigated by disaster risk management and action that we are undertaking at different level in order to respond to risk. And ultimately, as also early mentioned, there is nothing as a natural disaster. There may be a natural hazard, like a volcanic eruption or an earthquake, but ultimately, as society, we are responsible of the level of exposure and vulnerability of people and society to tower hazard and tower disasters. The main issue also is that climate change is a systemic change that's increasing the frequency and the magnitude of several of these hazards. And we are indeed, as humans, responsible of the very cause of climate change through greenhouse gases emission. Now, the main question that we are ultimately debating here, is Europe resilient? Is Europe ready to face disaster, and particularly an increase in magnitude and frequency of disaster in relation to climate change? The answer is no, we are not ready. And it's clear every time, as close to us as the day before, as yesterday, that we are not ready to face hazard and to face disaster. From the blackout in Portugal, Spain, and France, yesterday the flood in Valencia, the wildfire in Spain, heat waves in Paris, temperature rise in Greece. Yes, it is very true from the other side that there is a lot of initiative and actions happening at the most different level. There are the plans that and the action that have been taken in Paris in order to reduce heat waves and the impact of heat waves. There is Copenhagen and the development of the cloudburst plan. The fact that Denmark, for example, it's developing, it's having all its municipality as first country in the world as now to have local climate plans in all its municipalities. And we have all the very good and extremely important actions that has been shown today. And also the fundamental role that national policies and EU policies are having in bringing us forward. But yet all this is not quite enough to bring us to our being resilient by 2050. What we're speaking in meetings like this, it's very often about best practices that are very good. They're highlighting the pathway. They're extremely good example. They are increasing by number, but they're still very limited. It's still a very limited number of initiatives that are happening in cities, in regions, and in territories. There is still a tendency, for several reasons, to focus on single risk versus compounded risk, because compounded risk are much more complex to understand and to respond to. And the collaboration across boundaries, it's increasing. There are, as we've seen, very important, good example, but it needs also to be strengthened. And a way to do this is through multi-level governance. And everybody seems to agree that we should have better integration in between national policies or EU policies, national policies, local actions, that we shall have more collaboration in between the different DG at European level, in between different ministry and national level, and between different departments in the same city. The reality is that we are still not doing enough on this. And I can show you some data that has been collected in this report that was launched last year by UN Habitat, the UNESCO Chair on Urban Resilience at the University of Southern Denmark, and the United Nations Development Programme, where we analyze what there is for cities in the national determined contribution that are the cornerstone of the Paris Agreement, that represent the main climate change policy for all the 194 countries that are part of the Paris Agreement. We have been looking at mitigation, adaptation at the national and at urban level, try to understand by sector what there is in terms of mitigation challenges and responses, adaptation challenges and responses, and in terms of hazards and means of implementation. And we've been classifying the countries in cluster A with a strong urban content, meaning that the NDC is prioritizing explicitly cities as a key focus area, moderate urban content in cluster B, where cities are mentioned, but there is not a clear prioritization, and cluster C, where there is no mention of cities at all. And this is the result. And as you can see in the light blue color, in the lightest blue color, we have all the NDCs and all the countries that are not mentioning cities in the main national climate policy, the NDC. And Europe is among the NDCs that are not mentioning cities at all. And only 27% of the NDCs are namely stating that cities are a priority. And again, cities, it's where we are concentrating the highest, the 70% of greenhouse gas emission at the global level. So we are contributing to raise the level of hazards magnitude and frequency, and also where most of the world population is residing, and cities where this population is increasingly vulnerable and exposed. Again, as we have seen, particularly in the past couple of days for the blackout in Spain, Portugal, and France. Here, just a brief breakdown of the identification of urban mitigation challenge in a solid bar. The dash bar is looking at urban mitigation responses. This is at urban level, and you can see that there is a very limited number of NDCs that are looking at able to identify challenges by sector and able to identify responses by sector at the urban level. And this is still also very clear when we're speaking about urban adaptation challenges and urban adaptation responses. And even more so when we look in the yellow bar chart here at the bottom at climate hazards. The solid line represents the number of NDCs tackling, including in the NDCs, climate hazard at national level. And in the dashed line, the number of NDCs including specific hazards at urban level. As you can see in the main national policies on climate, the NDCs that are actually able to identify urban climate hazards at the local level are very limited. And this leads to the fact that there is not, as you can see in the top right graph, in very limited request in terms of finance, technology, and capacity building at the urban level. Ultimately, what I'm stating is that yes, Europe is doing a lot at urban regional level for climate change adaptation and mitigation. Yet it is a problem that these actions, these strategies at local level, are not portrayed in the main European national climate policies. That's the NDC. Because if these challenges, responses, if the assets are not recognized, then it's impossible to be able to quantify the needs in terms of finance, technology, and capacity building. And this is part of a larger number of issues that we're facing when we're trying to tackle the issue of resilience at urban regional level. The lack of data and the high level of uncertainty that we are tackling when we're speaking about the disaster, in particular climate disaster. We have a lot of data at urban level regarding floods, but data and information regarding droughts and regarding sea level rise of coastal vulnerability exposure at coastal level is still lacking. This is in part due to the current development of science, but it's also about integration of data sources, usability of data, and the accessibility of data by local subnational administration. We have a lack of finance. We have a very little investment on climate adaptation at global level, and very, very limited investment also in terms of loss and damages at global level, but also at European level. We have also an issue of switching the focus from early warning and post-disaster management to a proactive type of approach, looking more at prevention and mitigation of disaster. True system of foresight that shall be more refined and more embedded in policy decision-making that shall be evidence-based and decision-making also for local action. We have a systemic lack of capacity. Small and medium municipalities also in Europe, with some of the most wealthy and developed countries worldwide, small and medium municipalities in this very fortunate context are still lacking necessary resources to enact and develop climate action. There is also an issue of scale and integration that it's through Interreg we are explicitly tackling. There is also a lack of physical solution to pass from the strategic planning and action planning to the actual physical implementation of solution. And there is, in this case, an issue of, is there enough land and where is the land available in order to implement, for example, nature-based solution that can bring a co-benefit for both mitigation and adaptation. We have a fundamental, as I just showed you by this analysis of the urban content and national thermic contribution, a divide in between policy and national level and action at local level. And there is still quite some issues regarding the integration of norms, regulation, legislation. Last but not least, the public participation and involvement of local communities in decision-making. So going to our closure, I think that there is still a systemic lack of capacity. And there is, for several reasons that are administrative, that are policy related, but also very much practical, still a limitation in the territorial and cross-border approach of resilience. And for achieving that, to be able to reach this very ambitious objective to make Europe resilient by 2050, we need to strengthen the multi-level governance, the collaboration and integration in between EU and national policies and the local actions, and the integration of policies across all the different levels of government. And also remember that it's important to make decision and to develop policy and action plan based on evidence, based on science. And I would like to conclude, though, with a message of hope, again, reiterating the importance and the very good work that programs and initiatives like Interreg are doing. And I wish that there will be ultimately more investment in this type of initiative, and to take more wise and more forward-looking type of decision at the bigger level, where instead to focus on rearming Europe, we can really focus on making Europe resilient. Thank you very much for the attention, and I'm here for your comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nicola Tolling. I think it was really very interesting presentation. A lot of information here. So great points, as you said. There are no such thing as natural disasters. There are things as natural hazards, and that's really important for us to have in our minds. Really interesting, the study on the NDCs that you mentioned. 70% could focus more in cities, and you said most of the emissions come from cities. And I think I once heard people say, cities are the largest emitters, so cities are part of the problem, but they're definitely part of the solution, and they need to be heard, and their actions really need to be supported in order to address, to reduce greenhouse gas emission, but also, of course, be ready and more resilient. And as you said, Europe is doing a lot at the regional level, local level, and of course, it needs this multi-level governance to make this further connection. And another important point you mentioned about small cities and mid-sized cities, it's one area that we work quite a lot, I think, at Interreg, and they also can play a massive role in that. And sometimes in border areas, it's like these small cities that are already working and collaborating together. So definitely there is need for more capacity building, more territorial resilience, and again, as we've been discussing since the beginning, this multi-level governance. And again, and thanks also for mentioning the great work that Interreg is already doing and should certainly be strengthened as we are now discussing what's going to happen also in the next programming period for Interreg. But thank you very much for our presentation. I think we have time for some questions. If any of you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand right now. So anyone would like to ask any questions to Dr. Nicola? If not, right now, maybe not yet. I have just one question, because you mentioned also this issue about best practice in Europe, which also important. But I think something we sometimes you don't realize is that there are also some potential collaboration with outside of Europe. So, for example, some countries like Germany, they face large floods, but sometimes they can collaborate with countries that we don't expect, because of course, disaster risk management is a topic for mainly also developing countries.
Yeah.
So can you say a few words about this potential collaboration also between Europe and external partners?
Yes, no, climate change, it's affecting all countries. Some are more exposed, some are more vulnerable, but it's a common global challenge. So with reference to your question, I will just like to cite an example. Some few years ago, there's been a massive flood that affected Germany and part of Belgium. And one of the issue was that the early warning system was not working good enough to warn population and to have population ready for this type of disaster. And I'm fondly remembering the late Professor Salim Hook, that has been founder and coordinator of the International Climate Change Adaptation Center in Bangladesh, that has been following the Conference of the Party and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change since COP1. And he has been instrumental in the past decades to increase the disaster preparedness and the climate adaptation in Bangladesh. That was done also through the aid, the multilateral and bilateral aid of EU and a number of European countries. But for that type of flood event, he put the knowledge that Bangladesh has been developing in these decades at service of the German government. And this is a type of collaboration that often we are not considering, and this the South-North type of collaboration. For example, right now we have just started a EU DUT project for developing emergency shelters in schoolyards in Europe. And we are using as example also what has been done in using a school as emergency shelter in small island developing states. Because the experience in the global south is somehow more advanced than what we may have at European level.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Nicola. I think, as I said, I think it's good also to open our mind as well to these other collaboration opportunities. And I think we have time just for one more question, and I have one in the chat here. I mentioned, I think it's kind of connected to this. Do you have examples of well-handled disaster interventions? Is there a systemic follow-up? I don't know if you can see in the chat as well.
So there are many best practices that we can cite. What it's normally I can go back to the example that of the interventions being done in Paris, for example, after some few years of heat waves. Right now, the city has been starting a series of action in order to create a series of heat shelters through the renaturalization of the city, using approaches like the 15 minutes or X minutes city, nature-based solution, etc. Again, in this case, it was more a response to something that we have not been able to foresee. And I can see here the following question that there is here in the chart that is speaking about the preparedness and the uncertainty. The fact is that climate change is a wicked problem. It's extremely complex. It's bounded to high level of uncertainty. And any decision maker at national local level is not clear about what is the best course of action. Yet we must act, and we must act now. So the fundamental point in this, it's really to try to maintain a dialogue in between science, policy, and practice. Because myself, being a scientist, being involved on the climate negotiation for decades now. Until a few years ago, if asked, I would say that yes, in my lifetime, I wouldn't have seen the strongest effect of climate change. Since few years, I changed clearly my mind, because the level of climate change impact we are experiencing nowadays is something that was not foreseen by science. And this is due to the high level of complexity of this issue. The fact it's a global issue, and because also we need to develop basic science models and also be able to translate this information, like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is trying to do, to policymakers and decision makers.
Perfect. No, thank you very much, Professor. And I think it's as you said, there's still a lot of ongoing discussions, and I mean we could continue for a long time here discussing this, but I think we are also conscious of time, and we still have some presentations from on the ground now. I think would be really interesting, from projects from north of Europe all the way to La Réunion. But thank you again, Professor, and for your time, for a great presentation and insights to this group. And now I'll hand over to my colleague Nicolas, so we can start the next session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. That was really enlightening. I think it was really appreciated, your insights on what can be done. And indeed, as some of the questions were highlighting, I think it's time that we look into how it's already being developed in practice over several programming periods in Interreg, but currently as well, responding to more and more changing climate and situations across Europe and across the world indeed. So we will have now 3 presentations from 3 different Interreg programs, specific projects dealing with also specific disaster risks and climate risks within their regions. I would like to first welcome Meritxell from University of Vic Beta Technology Center in Catalonia to present how their approach, that integrated multi-level governance approach to tackle is responding to the risk of flash flooding in the Mediterranean. Meritxell, the floor is yours.
Hello.
And as we're running a little bit behind on time, I would like to ask our speakers if you could stick to 10 minutes if possible, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to present our project here. I will introduce you to the Local for Flood project, that is an Interreg Euromed project that started last year, and its main topic is flood risk management, and specifically the management of flash floods that typically occurs on the Mediterranean region. Let's see if I can share. Can you see my screen, right?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, okay. Well, as you know, floods are the most common type of natural disaster recorded in Europe, and among the most costly in terms of human and economical losses. Also, we know that the climate change is increasing the frequency and the intensity of these events, and especially of the extreme flood events, such as flash floods, particularly around the Mediterranean. Flash floods are characterized by rapid onset and decline, and typically results from intense rainfall, concentrated over a relatively small catchment area. And even if we have this European Floods Directive, that establishes the European framework for the assessment of management of floods, it's true that extending flood risk management to flash floods faces different challenges, and these challenges are mainly related to this rapid onset, because these leave little time to coordinate the flood response, and also this makes really difficult to monitor and predict these events. Then the Local for Flood project aims to improve the flash flood risk management in the Mediterranean regions. And in these regions, this is like an unsolved problem that is expected to be worse in the near future due to the climate change. And here you can see some examples of past flash floods, and here it could be also included the flood occurred in Valencia last autumn, that with devastating effects, as you know. And well, the Local for Flood aims to improve this flash flood risk management by promoting an integrated and multi-stakeholder approach that includes prevention, adaptation, and mitigation actions, because we know that this is the way to really face these events in an effective way. Regarding the prevention, we are developing an early warning system and a specific early warning system for each of the different pilots where we are working that includes local data in order to improve a little bit the prediction of these flash floods, even it's really difficult to predict them. Also, we are designing and implementing different education materials and activities to raise the awareness and improve the response capacity of the citizens and authorities to these events, because these events have like these rapid onsets. We need like the citizens to be prepared for them. And also we are promoting the implementation of nature-based solutions to mitigate flash flood risk as a long-term solution to be more prepared and adapt to them. The partnership of this project includes partners from 6 different countries, and we have different universities, also research center, but also national authorities and technological providers. And we have 9 pilot sites where we will test this integrated and multi-stakeholder approach. 2 of them are in Spain, in Catalonia and Balearic Islands. We also have 2 of them in Malta, another one in Italy, 1 in Greece, and 2 of them in Bulgaria. The project is structured in 3 different work packets. The first one is the designing of all these different tools. We have been working on them during the first year of the project, and now we are starting to implement these tools. We are in the second work package. We are testing these tools in these pilots, and we hope that soon we will have interesting results to share. What we have achieved so far, where we have developed an early warning system specific for each of these pilots that it's been currently implementing, and we will test it during this year. Then we have also conducted a flash flood awareness and risk perception evaluation on each pilot, and it will be the results of this survey will be the basis for designing different education materials and activities. We have also developed a catalog of nature-based solutions for flood risk management, specifically looking if some of them could be useful for flash flood mitigation. We have also developed a detailed characterization of each pilot site, and using all this information, we have designed a training program and different workshops to be implemented across all sites in order to promote this integrated and multi-stakeholder management of flash flood risk. And finally, we have also interviewed different key stakeholders at each pilot, and we are started to implement this training program and workshops with them. Here you have an overview of the training program and the different workshops that we are implementing. The first one was took place last March in all the different pilots, and it was focused on the flood risk management with some training presentation regarding the principles of flood risk management, and also the early warning systems and why these systems could be useful to face this problem. Together with all the different stakeholders, we did a practical exercise and analysis of the flood risk management plan, and also we co-implement or we discussed about the best way to implement this local early warning system developed for each pilot. The next training session will be in June, and it will be focused on the awareness and the need of the awareness and preparation of the citizens for this type of events. Then we will present to them the results of this survey regarding the risk perception, and we also will implement, we'll explain to them the different materials that we have designed, and we'll discuss together the best way to implement them. And we also we'll show to them an analysis of the current flood response chains to see which are the weak points and how can we improve them. Then the last session will be in autumn, and will be focused on promotion these nature-based solutions. We will present to the different stakeholders like a technical review of the NBS that could be implemented on each site to mitigate flash flood risk, and then we will discuss together which of them could be the best one to be implemented. Here you have some pictures of the first training session that took place in all the different pilots last month. It generated like a great interest among the different stakeholders, and we got like a participation from them. Some of Central Macedonia, in Bari, in Bulgaria. And which are the main outputs expected? No? We expect to obtain a better understanding of the challenges associated with flash flood risk management in the Mediterranean regions. We expect it also to promote a greater connection and coordination among the stakeholders involved in flood risk management at the local level. We are developing different tools to improve flash flood risk. These tools are this early warning system specifically developed for the pilot, different education materials ready to be used, also including specific information from each pilot, and also detailed analysis of the most suitable NBS to be implemented. Then with all this information, we will prepare an action plan for the stakeholders to improve the prevention, the adaptation, and the mitigation of the risk associated with flash floods in the area. We will also develop a synthesis of the lessons learned to inform policies and guide flash flood risk management in regions facing the same risk. And finally, we will also organize a final event to summarize all the project achievements at the end of the project in June for the next year. And you can follow us on the LinkedIn to have more information about this event, and you are invited to attend it if you can. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Medichel. That's really interesting approach, highlighting. I mean, from a personal perspective, if I may say, being based in Valencia and having lived the terrible floods that happened here last autumn, it really highlighted this need for and this lack of preparedness and prevention of such what looked like unpredictable risks, and the early warning system would have certainly helped save a lot of lives and damage. So it really highlights the necessity of working in that field, in something that happens everywhere and more frequently and more severely. So kudos, and we look forward to hearing more from you and the development of your project. And if anybody has any questions for Medichel, please raise your hand or write it in the chat. And if not, I suggest that we move to our next presentation, which is also very much linked to the topic, because there were also some severe storms and flash floods actually in the Indian Ocean, in the EU regions of La Réunion and Mayotte. As you know, or as you may not know, Interreg is present all across the world, thanks to the outermost regions at EU level. So we have French, Spanish, and Portuguese regions that are located throughout the world. And indeed, there's one Interreg program in the Caribbean, in the Amazonia, in the Atlantic Ocean around Canarias and Madeira and Azores, and in the Indian Ocean, indeed. And these programs have some very specific challenges because of their location, but also in the integration and the collaboration with partner countries that are very remote from Europe mainland, not only from the geographical perspective, but also from the challenges they face that are very, very distinct. So I would like to give the floor now to Eric from the French Red Cross, who's leading the project that saw the light of the Pirois Center. Eric, the floor is yours.
Bonjour, good morning, everyone. Can you see the presentation I started to share?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I'm working for the French Red Cross, which established 25 years ago a regional intervention platform for the Southwest Indian Ocean based in La Réunion. And I will present what we've been doing since the beginning of the program. First, our region is composed of small island developing states, Comoros, Mauritius, Seychelles. Then we have also a bigger island, Madagascar. We have two French outmost regions, La Réunion and Mayotte. And also we have coastal African countries, Mozambique and Tanzania. So we are working on disaster risk management in a regional cooperation program with all these countries, territories, and through the Red Cross and Red Crescent network. So I'm working for the French Red Cross, and we are supporting and working with all Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies in these countries. This region is very exposed to most of the natural hazards, tropical cyclones, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, wildfires, etc. The only natural hazard we don't have is a snowstorm and avalanche. We have also very different development level in these countries and territories. But I would say that the most of the population, 115 million people through the 7 countries, are very vulnerable to natural hazard, not only natural hazard, but also epidemics in this region. We started by responding to disaster 25 years ago, where from La Réunion, we had a small warehouse with some non-food items, and we had the French Red Cross delegates, which were deployed to the field in Madagascar and Comoros in Mozambique when there were a cyclone or flood, etc. So it was much like an old-school humanitarian response. Then very quickly, we figured out that it was not very efficient, and we started to have a preparedness component in our regional program, building the capacity at national level and also sharing experiences at regional level. A little later, we went down to the community level with a very important disaster risk reduction component. I will give some example of our concrete activities, but today the biggest part of our work is working with the communities, education and awareness, preparing people to reduce the risk of disaster and to act before, during, and after an event. And also, it happened less often, but we also sometimes implement post-disaster activities such as reconstruction project. It's a regional program co-funded by different donors, including Interreg. We benefited from Interreg fundings since 2005 in the different programming, but we also have fundings from the French government, Agence Française de Développement, other European fundings, ERDF notably, and also the private sector with the Fondation CMA CGM currently. And we have implemented a lot of emergency response, 77 emergency response, but as I said, we are doing more development, disaster risk reduction project now. To illustrate a bit what I'm saying, I will introduce a few examples of activities in the field of education and awareness or disaster risk reduction, which is now our priority, as I said, and we are targeting in particular the children in schools. We have partnerships with the ministries of education in all countries we are working with, and we have developed school programs, school curricula, and we have developed school manuals, not only school manuals, different type of tools, a lot of serious games. We are now using virtual reality, escape games, smartphone applications, depending on the age of the target children, and we have a network of technical partnership, not only the ministries of education, but we are working closely with the Met services, volcano observatories, etc., to develop a joint strategy, education and awareness strategy. It's a multi-hazard approach, and then we work with them to have different tools and medium to reach not only the children in the school, but the broader communities. We also have public events that we organize. Could be also, for example, serious games like how to establish a household disaster kit, for instance. And we have benefited from different, it was mentioned, the Indian Ocean Interreg, but also we had another Interreg project specifically for Mayotte, Madagascar, and Comoros, where we also developed similar activities in Mayotte and in the Comoros more specifically. Today, there is an example of projects, or the approach has been developed in La Réunion and then adapted and duplicated in all countries we work with. So in Mauritius, Madagascar, Comoros, Seychelles, etc., there are the similar partnerships between the Red Cross, the ministries of education, and the local actors, and we have developed similar tools adapted to the local context. In the disaster preparedness component, we are working on a very specific field. It's the disaster laws or disaster framework, legal frameworks. The International Federation of the Red Cross has a specialized legal department which can support the governments to update or develop their legal frameworks when it comes to disaster risk management. For example, in our region, there was no law in the Comoros, no disaster risk management law in the Comoros until last year, where the first law was approved, and we were able to support the local government. It was a long-term process over a few years to support them to establish this law, and we are working on experience sharing between countries and also at regional level with the Indian Ocean Commission, the IOC, and the IOR, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, where we try to share experiences, especially for the within small island developing states. Then we work on a more, I would say, more operational level, supporting contingency plannings, developing SOP, standard operational procedures for the Red Cross societies and teams, but also linked with the national plans, civil protection plans. We support some simulation exercises at national level, at regional level, putting together different actors, Red Cross, governments, other NGOs, UN agencies, etc. Then a number of training to train the response team at different level national level, regional level, down to the local level with the Red Cross network we have. And then we have a more concrete component, which is a logistic component. From one small warehouse in La Réunion, we now have developed a network of 11 warehouses. So you have a map bottom right of the slide. We have 600 metric tons of non-food items pre-positioned in each islands to make sure that we can reach as quickly as possible the affected communities after a disaster. In the response, disaster response. So just to give you a few examples, but we have supported 77 emergency response at regional level, reaching more than 2,000 million beneficiaries in emergency. We have deployed 800 metric tons of non-food items during this emergency response. And you may be able to read that almost half of our operations have been after cyclones, tropical cyclones, but also floods. And then you have epidemics, volcano eruptions as well. And the operation has been all over the region in Madagascar, Mozambique, Comoros mainly. So just to mention that the Interreg is not supporting the response operations. These operations have to be funded through emergency donors like DG ECHO or the French government and or through emergency appeals. And from this 20 plus years of experience, we had the project to increase the program and the capacity, and we were able last year to inaugurate a new infrastructure here. It's called Pirois Center. We have doubled the capacity of preposition stocks here in La Réunion. We have 900 square meters warehouse. We also have now a training center facility where we can organize trainings for up to 100 trainees simultaneously. We have 4 rooms. We have an operational center, and we have more space for offices, not only for our teams, but also to work together with partners, where the idea is to mutualize the expertise and the capacities in this region. And this project was also co-funded by Interreg, along with the French government and Agence Française de Développement, and also little pocket money from the French Red Cross. This will allow us to not only develop our activities in the field of disaster risk management, those I mentioned very briefly, disaster risk reduction, education and awareness, preparedness, etc. But we will also develop more the new services, in particular training and research and innovation. The training component is very important. We have organized since 2008 300 courses benefiting to 5,650 learners. So that's about 30 to 40 courses per year. We have partnerships with the University of La Réunion, with Institut Bioforce, which is a French reference institute for humanitarians and development solidarity actors. And the idea is to propose trainings to more different publics, not only the humanitarian sectors, but the local governments or local actors, the private sectors, also students. We are collaborating on a master degree here on risk and environment, and also we are developing an online training offer, and we will be able with this new facility to organize also short-term campus and develop new curricula. just also a short note on the research and innovation component. So we started a few years ago to work more closely with researchers and the academic and research sectors to improve our action, to understand better the dynamics of the risk in our region, to understand also better how the habits or the local culture influence the people action or reaction, the comprehension of the exposure to natural hazard, for example. So now we are part of a network of Red Cross research and reference centers where we can get evidence and recommendations that we include in our activities. And we have also an innovation component where we have some needs that are coming up from the field during our activities, operations, and we try to identify partners, oftenly from the private sector, some startup, for example, which can propose some new tools or devices that can be adapted to our needs, and we will then test and develop these in the field and possibly make the product scaled up if validated by the testing. So that is something that we will develop more and more within the P1 Center activity.
Eric,
I would like also
if you don't mind wrapping up, as we have one more
Yeah.
presentation, we're running a bit late. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes. Just to mention that we have two other similar regional intervention platform, one in the Caribbean based in Guadeloupe that is also benefiting from Interreg fundings, and another one in New Caledonia for the South Pacific Ocean. And this last slide is an overview of our partners, financial partners and technical partners. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you for a very interesting presentation and showing that Interreg is really active thanks to cooperation. And as the last slide show, you need a lot of technical partners to implement and deploy these kind of solutions. So also I note the engagement of local communities acting as a multiplier of these practical solutions is really helpful to engage and train population. So thank you very much. Please use the chat to ask any questions to Eric. And I will now would like to welcome our last speaker, Anna from the Norrbotten County in Sweden, who will tell us a bit more about how in the Arctic protected areas there are also some challenges linked to climate change that needs to that requires our attention. Thank you very much, Anna. The floor is yours.
Hi, are
Anna?
you seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Good.
Well, we were. No, not anymore. Now we are, yes.
I had to unmute myself first.
Perfect.
But good, let's go. So thank you for the invitation to speak today about this cross-border EU-funded project. It has a quite long name, Climate Change Communication and Adaptation in Arctic Protected Areas. So I'm Anna Berhan, and I work at the Regional Government Office in the very north of Sweden. And this project focuses on how to manage protected areas in a changing climate. We're joining hands across borders between northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And I think that in sparsely populated areas such as ours, working across borders is probably an extra good idea. Then we can enhance capacity building in each country, and especially as now when facing similar challenges. And this CLAP project was initiated because we all saw that climate change was affecting our national parks and nature reserves. And it was affecting how we can manage these areas and also the safety of both our staff and visitors. So we needed to address it in a systematic way. We are 5 partners here in Northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland working together for 3 years. And we have 5 pilot areas in the project that you can see on the map here. So I will tell you a little about the project and outcomes, but first a few words about the climate change here in our part of the world. Perhaps you know already that due to a phenomenon called polar amplification, the temperature is increasing faster the further north you get on our planet. So here in northern Sweden's mountains, the temperature is increasing almost twice the rate of the global speed. The temperature is, of course, increasing all year round, but it's increasing more during winter time. So our winters are getting shorter and warmer, and this is already causing problems. There will also be more precipitation, rain, and the weather will also be more unpredictable here, with an increased risk of extreme weather events such as heat waves, droughts, and floods. And unprecedented hot, dry periods in the summer will increase the risk of unprecedented wildfires in the mountain birch forest. There's also a higher risk of health hazards for visitors because of, for example, heat and reduced water quality in lakes and streams. And in 2019, there was a terrible accident in Abisko in Swedish mountains with skiing school children being hit by a slush avalanche that was formed after an unusually warm period during late winter. Someone needs to turn the microphone off, I think. So warming winters means that we get more freeze-thaw events, and that makes everything very icy instead of snowy. And we can't either rely anymore on snow and ice-covered lakes for transportation of material and staff for maintenance work on the remote sites. And the winter tourism is also affected. So also when visitors hike instead of ski, trail erosion will increase. And icier conditions during winter will also affect reindeer herding in the areas, as the reindeer can't access the vegetation they need to eat under the snow. Here are just some of the species that are affected by climate change in the Arctic region, and some of them are crucial key species for the ecosystems here. Some other effects are shrubbification of the open heathland and meadows on higher altitudes, melting permafrost causing erosion, and also, of course, increasing the emissions of greenhouse gases. And we also see changing visitation patterns. For example, more tourists want to come to the north for coolcation. And the more visitors we get, this can also multiply negative effects of climate change, such as erosion and disturbance for the reindeer, etc. So in the CLAP project, we're working in 5 blocks that you can see here. The first is to learn more about climate change and adaptation planning. And luckily, we found out that the American National Park Service had a long experience helping their parks to adapt to climate change, and they have helped us a lot. We also cooperate with the lateral level in Sweden in their work with national policy. Secondly, we are building capacity. So we have launched a joint online training program for planners and managers. And we're also piloting adaptation planning in these protected areas. And we really are learning from each other, and learnings will also go into a joint handbook for all 3 countries. Thirdly, we will test mitigating our own emissions, for example, by trying electric snowmobiles and designing climate-smart trails and campsites. Communication is also very important, and we are working jointly on new ways to reach visitors. And we are also attempting to create a network on climate change for the future. As I mentioned, NPS has helped us a lot, and in planning for climate change, we have used their method. It's available online in this report that you can see here. The method itself is very similar to other methods like the EU Climate Adaptation Support Tool, but the NPS method focuses on protected areas. For example, after assessing vulnerabilities and risks of an area's resources, it's important to also look at the management goals and see if they are feasible or if they need to be updated to get climate smart goals. NPS also has a climate change response strategy where they set the scene for their overall climate change work, and it's based on these 4 cornerstones. Regarding especially communication, we have found that talking with people about the changes they see are happening in a place, for example, a national park that they love and feel connected to, this can be a really good place and a good way of reaching them to get to create engagement and hopefully inspire to action. Here are just some pictures from Abisko National Park, which is our project pilot area here in Sweden. And here we have piloted and started using scenario planning to produce plausible climate futures for the park. As you might know, scenario planning is a tool that allows managers to work with uncertainty and prepare for a wide range of changes. In Abisko, we created a broad description of potential future conditions, and we discussed then how different hazards can interact. So this approach really helped us to develop robust adaptation options. And we saw that climate parameters can be combined with other drivers of change, like, for example, a war or a pandemic or increasing visitation numbers. So up on the right, you just see an example of how 4 scenarios can be created by combining climate change and visitor numbers. In Abisko, we gather tourism operators, reindeer herders, researchers, municipality planners, field workers, and others, and had a 2-day workshop with scenario planning this March. And then all countries are doing similar processes in their pilot areas. And this, the result and the outputs from the Abisko workshops will be part of the basis for a new climate-informed management plan for the area. So just some final words. Adaptation, we feel, is very urgent, and we need to work at all levels, not wait for some top level, but start at the bottom as well. And monitoring and research are more important than ever, also requiring resources, of course. We don't know everything, but we can still prepare. And collaboration and communication are key factors for successful adaptation. Also to note that different drivers of change often interact, and here scenario planning can really help us to prepare. And as we also noted from the US adaptation work, you can really note that worst case scenarios do happen. So this is also important to prepare sooner than later. So we can't predict the future, but we can prepare for it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Anna, for again a very inspiring presentation, showing some real challenges that in the Arctic area are more prominent and getting more and more due to the effect of climate change, need for adaptation. And I think this is the key thread in all presentation is the need for better preparedness to better respond, and these effects and these natural hazards will have in any case an impact on our territories. So thanks to these solutions, I think we are getting there. And thank you very much for all your action in the project. Feel free to use the chat again for questions, and we will wrap up very soon as we are already out of time. I just wanted to share just a final piece of information. If you have liked our webinar today and would like to join us for our next one, we have already opened the registration. You have the link here, and I'll put it in the chat as well, for our next webinar, which will be joining the Greener Europe community like we are today, with also the Smarter Europe, both networks that are running from Interact, as the topic in question will be circular economy, which is very relevant for both aspects of competitiveness and sustainability across Europe, and with many solutions developed by Interreg as well. And we want to take this opportunity of EU Green Week happening in Brussels that week, and with the topic of circular economy as well. So please register, and we put as indicative date the 6th of June, which hopefully won't change, but if you register, at least you will be in the loop, and we look forward to seeing you there. Also, we will be at Sustainable Energy Week in Brussels as well to represent Interreg community, and we'll be in touch with you about that, about the two program colleagues. And finally, you may have seen in some of our communication that we are in between systems. We are in between platforms that we're using from Interact, and program colleagues, you probably have seen this already. But if you want to stay up to date with our next opportunities and any information we share from Interact, representing the Interreg community as a whole, you will need to join our new platform in the similar way as you've been doing previously for some of you. With this new platform here, you will see that very soon we will have a dedicated channel for the Greener Europe thematic network, and we will post new announcements there as well, and exchanges. So that's it from our side as well. You have our contacts, and we will share the presentations and the recording of this webinar very soon. Guilherme, do you have a few last words as well?
I'll just thank everyone. I think it was a really good session, and I think, as I said, it's a very important topic that keeps growing in importance, and I'm sure we'll continue our collaboration. But thank you all for joining and for staying even 15 minutes late. So yeah, really appreciate that, and we really like this collaboration also between projects and programs. We can see that this is something very, very fruitful for everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to our speakers who shared their experience. And I can see from the chat that everybody really appreciated your insights and your practical solutions being developed. So well done, and we will be in touch soon. See you at the next one. And have a nice Labor Day weekend, of course.
Likewise, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Alexandra.
Bye.